If you have been looking for the perfect opportunity to finish your Wattpad story, there is seriously no time like the month of November. Hey fresties, welcome back to Wattpad Wednesdays. I just realized you guys can't see Naked Froggy because he is on the thing behind me. So, like I said, welcome back to Wattpad Wednesdays. I am super sorry about missing last week's upload. October has just been hectic for me. And part of the reason why is because next month, November, is National Novel Writing Month. A month that I look forward to every year and also fear every year. One of you guys requested that I make a video talking about Nano since it is coming up. Thank you very much for the video request. I freaking love Nano, even though, and this may make you a little wary about this video, I technically have never won Nano before. I have never hit that standard goal of 50k words, but I participate in Nano, have since 2018, I think, and I love it. And while it is like this huge thing with Nano to meet that goal, I firmly believe that that is not the sole purpose of Nano, and that it can be a very useful time period whether you hit that goal or not. So today's video is just going to be all about what Nano is, the typical goals that you see people set for Nano, what kind of project you can work on during Nano, and also my plans for Nano. I'm going to give you my best suggestions and tips and methods for National Novel Writing Month, how to really get the most out of it and be most likely to succeed at it, so that hopefully I can win this year and you guys can also win this year, no matter what your goal is. Also, I just want to go ahead and apologize if you guys can hear the wind outside. It's windy out there today. It sounds like I'm in a wind tunnel, but I can't do anything about it. So first things first, what is National Novel Writing Month? I think Reedsy explains it perfectly well. National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, is an annual event in which participants commit to writing a 50,000 word novel between November 1st and 30th. That is the standard definition of what National Novel Writing Month is. If you are aiming to hit this goal of 50,000 words from the 1st to the 30th, then if you were to write every single day, your word count goal for each day would be 1,667 words. The challenge comes with trying to keep up the consistency every single day and show up every single day and get those words on the page. Now, while this is the standard goal for Nano, 50,000 words, a totally new project, nobody is going to smack you on the wrist with a ruler if you don't abide by these rules. There aren't really any rules to Nano. If you have a project that you are already working on and you want to use National Novel Writing Month as the extra push that you need to finally put the pen to paper and sit down and really finish that novel, you can do that. You do not have to start a new project. If you want to write a novella, not a full-length novel, and 50,000 words is way above your word count goal, you do not have to try to pump out those 50,000 words when really you would be more likely to be sitting somewhere around 25k for a finished novella. In my opinion, I am not by any means a Nano purist, and I don't even think that you really need to be working on a novel during NaNoWriMo, and that may sound a little weird, but my original goal for this year, what I thought was going to be my National Novel Writing Month goal, was to finish plotting the entirety of my 5-part series. I have book 1 planned, but I was going to use Nano to finish the complete outlines for the rest of the 4 books. So technically I wasn't really writing a book. I probably wouldn't have even been keeping track of my word count or anything like that. I just had a goal to finish the entire outline for 4 books. Nano is something that is customizable and that is really individual to you, but what we are going to be talking about today is using it to finish whatever project that you want to finish for your Wattpad account. Wow, I talk with my hands a lot. So I'm sure for many of you guys, you probably already have a project started and your goal is going to be that you want to push yourself to finish that book. And that is totally cool, totally valid. I have done that before in the past for Nano. But just because you have started writing does not mean that you have actually gotten done all the prep work that is going to help you out through Nano. Now, I will say I am a planner all the way through. I am not close to a pantser in any way, shape, or form. So if you are a pantser, this tip might not sort of vibe well with your particular methods, but I still think it's helpful to at least have a smidgen of an outline. Whether you are a planner 100%, you know every single little detail that is going to happen in the story, or if you are a pantser who just sits down and starts typing. I think that a plan, whether it is super loose or super rigid, can be helpful for every single writer, especially when you are setting a goal for yourself to sit down and finish a project within a certain time frame, because you are not going to necessarily have the extra time to work through any complications or writer's block that you may come across in your normal writing life. So whether you are working on something that you've already started or you are starting a new project altogether, my tip would be to have an outline. If you want to keep it super basic and still give yourself that freedom that comes with the pantsing method, that is totally cool. My recommendation would be to still have these two super important things figured out and totally known. One, know your main character's arc. Know what their flaw is at the beginning of the story and know how it is resolved at the end of the story. Find out what their misbelief about the world is, that they don't deserve love or that it doesn't exist, or whatever their flaw is, and figure out how that is changed at the end of the story, where you see their state of being at the end of the story. Do they get better? Do they figure out that they were believing in a lie and that they had this misbelief, or do they fall deeper down the rabbit hole and get worse and it is not a happy ending for them? And the second thing I would say is to know at least the rough plot points for what is going to happen at the beginning of your story, the middle of your story, and the end of your story. This is just focusing on very classic, basic story structure. You know, we're not going into any super deep methods like the Save the Cat story structure, which if you are looking to plan a story very in depth for Nano, totally recommend that method. That is my go-to. And I know I have mentioned her in at least one video before, but if you can't get your hands on the Save the Cat method, you can also check out Abby Emmons on YouTube. She has so many videos that are just incredibly helpful when it comes to plotting. So if you are starting prep for Nano, that is a channel that you are going to want to check out if you don't already have a tried and true method that you love to go to. But yeah, knowing the beginning, middle, and end plot points for your story is so important and so helpful. I promise you, you will not regret figuring these things out, because if you get even a smidgen of writer's block when you are, say on chapter 5 of your story, you know where you're heading. You know that you are heading to whatever that middle plot point, probably the climax kind of your story is, and you know that you just need to get your character there. So that can really help you surpass the writer's block by finding out what needs to happen to get my character from where they are right now to that middle plot point that I have already figured out. As opposed to if you don't have that figured out, you don't really know where your character needs to go, so you're just gonna have all these ideas flying around in your head. And considering that this is a timed event, that you are trying to finish this within 30 days, you don't have, like I said before, all that extra time to go through these ideas that you are having. The brainstorming really needs to come before November 1st hits. When it comes to knowing where your character is going and getting them there, that is really important and can really save you a lot of time and writer's block if you know where you're going. I've mentioned it before, but I am a super rigid planner, and I like to even go into chapter outlines and outline each individual chapter so I know exactly what is happening in every chapter. I just know that that is going to help me so much when it comes to trying to win Nano this year, because every time I sit down at my desk to write and I open up my Scrivener document and I go to whichever chapter it is I'm working on, I open chapter 19 and I look at it and I say, okay, here's a list of things that are happening in this chapter. Here's how the character is feeling. Here is whose point of view we're seeing it from. Everything just all laid out. I don't even have to think. I just have to sit down and write. Depending on your goal for whatever your word count is, whether it's you want to hit 50,000 words, or maybe you don't even have a word count and your goal is just, hey, I want to finish this. I don't know how many words it's going to be, but I want to finish it. Or maybe your word count goal is 100K, or maybe it is 20,000 words, whatever it is, dividing that by 30, you will get the amount of words that you need to write every day. For the sake of the average Nano participant, let's say that your goal is 50,000 words. As a result, you will be needing to write 1,667 words a day. Obviously, there are probably going to be some days in November where you're not going to be able to write. I know that for me personally, I'm probably not going to write on Thanksgiving because my family's gonna be over, I'm gonna wanna watch the parade, all that stuff. So writing, probably just not gonna get done that day, so bam, those 1,667 words, they gotta go somewhere. They gotta go sparsed out over all the other days. So, you know, now I'm not doing 50K divided by 30, I'm doing 50K divided by 29. And that's assuming that I only have one day of writing that I miss. What you have to do is figure out how many days in November are you not going to be able to write. You know, days that you may have a really long shift at work, or you have a lot of classes at school that day, you have a big chemistry exam, whatever it is. If you don't think you're going to be able to write that day, oh my gosh, the wind! If you don't think you're going to be able to write that day, then don't count it as a day. And if you do write, fabulous. But if you don't, then you're not going to feel like you're falling super behind. But what this does mean is that your word count goal for every other day is going to get lifted up just a little bit. And at this point, you might be looking at that daily number and feeling like, there's no way that I can do this. You know, you may be thinking, how would I possibly write this much every day? Especially if you're someone who has just been writing a little bit casually in the past and doesn't really pay that much attention to their word count every day. But I promise you, it is really not that difficult to meet your word count goal for the day. With my favorite method, I find it to be pretty easy most of the time, surprisingly. And that method that I use is Pomodoro sprinting. What this means for me is that I sit down, I put on a timer for 25 minutes. I like to use a website called Tomato Timers because it has a cute tomato on it, and I love tomatoes. I sit down, I put on a timer for 25 minutes, and I just start typing. I try really hard to not worry about spelling or grammatical errors, and I just write, and I think to myself, it does not matter if this is the worst thing that I have ever written. It doesn't matter. All I have to do is come back later and edit it, because editing is the easy part, in my opinion. Maybe that's just me, but getting the initial words on the page is like, that is the stressful part, because I sit there and I start freaking myself out and thinking, this isn't gonna come out the way I want it to, I'm not Nora Roberts. That one, that's always in my head. I start really getting too much in my head. If I put that time limit on myself of 25 minutes, it really helps fight off that, you know, inner critic. And I just think, okay, I want to see a big number at the end of these 25 minutes, so let me get typing. If it sucks, it doesn't matter. I will come back later and I will fix it. The thing is, most of the time, it does not suck. It's probably not going to be as bad as you think it's going to be. I created a word sprint tracker for myself. This is super helpful and super motivating. All I do is I have a column for the date, I have a column for the sprint total, I have a column for the total that I have written that day, and I have a column for the total overall for the story that I am working on. At the end of that 25-minute timer, I look at whatever my word count was, I write it in the second column after the date, and if it's the first sprint of the day, then I just write that in the today column as well. If it's not, then I add it up with the other ones before. I don't tally up my total word count every time. I usually just save that for the end of my sprinting sessions, because I'm not gonna lie, I just don't like that much math in one sitting. Then I set a timer for anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes just as a little break. And sometimes I don't even partake in the break, I'll be honest. If I'm on a roll, then I'm on a roll, and I just go ahead and set that 25-minute timer again. But if I feel like I want a little break to, you know, message back a friend or go on Tumblr for a few minutes, then I will just set that timer. And then once that 5 or 10 minutes or whatever is up, then I get right back into writing, set another 25-minute timer, and do the process all over again. Now, I do not have a very consistent record for how many words I get per 25-minute sprint. If you look at this sheet I have in front of me that is completed, I have everywhere from low 400s to just over 1,000. So really, it can range pretty severely. I would say that my average, if I have one, is somewhere just under 700 words. So at that rate, you know, it's really not gonna be super difficult for me to get my word count for the day. And I don't know about you guys, but seeing all the numbers out on paper like that and just being able to watch the tally go higher and higher every single day, it is super satisfying for me, and it just makes me all the more motivated to sit down and start tracking every day. That was a good sentence. On the background on my computer, I have a little quote on it that just says, remember, you cannot edit a blank page, because that is going to be my motto for Nano, and really is my motto for just every day. Because as a writer, you can probably relate that sometimes it's easy to forget that, and it's easy to just feel like I'm not in a writing mood today, it's not gonna come out good today, and just totally abandon it for the day. But you just have to remember, if you sit down and you write, even if it is total drivel, even if you go back and look at it later and you were like, you know, why is this character acting this way? This character doesn't even sound like themselves, or your setting description is just bland and dry and it doesn't create any sort of imagery in your head at all. It's fine, because those words are on the page and you can fix them now. It's not starting from zero and having to write them all. So 10 out of 10 recommend the writing sprint method. I used to do 30 minutes, but recently I've taken it down to 25 because I just like the faster pace of it. Another thing that you might find super helpful for NaNoWriMo, personally, I don't really use this method just because I find myself that I don't keep up with it, but the National Novel Writing Month website, if you make an account, you can track your word count on there, and you can add other buddies on the website to compare your word count with and sort of, you know, compete with a little bit to see who writes more each day and who is further ahead with their goal, who meets their goal. You know, if you have a bunch of people who you're competing with, you may be less likely to slack off and just think, you know, I'll get them next year, because you have all these people watching. So obviously you probably want to win it a little bit more than if it was just you who was paying attention. I will go ahead and link my NaNoWriMo profile in the description. If you guys want to add me as a buddy this year, I will totally add you back. I can't promise that I'm gonna be super active on the website, but I am gonna try this year just because I think it is a really fun part of the Nano experience that I've sort of been missing for the past couple years, because I always like start off doing it and then I just taper off and stop updating my word count on there. So I don't know, I'm gonna try to do it this year and see it all the way through. Plus, another thing about that is when you update your word count, if you update it daily and, you know, you're really on top of it, you get like these little badges that, I mean, they don't really like do anything, but it's just nice to get this little picture reward for like, oh, you wrote 3 days in a row, congrats, here's a little badge for your profile. You know, I like it. I think it's cute. Okay, so those are all my tips for how to use Nano to finish your Wattpad book, get it done, get it written, see the finish line, and cross it. Let me know if you guys are participating in Nano this year, and if you are, what your plans are in the comments down below. And if you're interested, I will just ramble about my own Nano plans for a minute or two now. If you are following me on Wattpad, then you might know that I recently have started posting my latest story, Hearts Like Ours, the first in a 5-part series of small town contemporary romance, and I'm seriously in love with this series. Like, I love romance. It's the best genre. I'm sorry, like, I don't want to fight about it, but I would if I had, like, I will die on this hill. But anyway, yeah, I actually thought that I was gonna have this book finished by the end of October, but as of recording this right now, it is October 26th. It is October 26th, and I am only like a little over 40% done with it. Okay, I'm really slouching, but like I'm sleepy. Yeah, October was just not my month, and obviously sometimes that's gonna happen during Nano as well. So if it does happen to you that Nano, you know, maybe November just turns out to be totally crazy for you and you don't meet your Nano goal, don't stress about it. It's just a month at the end of the day. If you wanted to, you could have Nano any month of the year. And in fact, there are camp Nanos sprinkled throughout the year. I think April and July? That sounds right. I think it's those 2 months. But yeah, I was a little disappointed at first because I did really think, okay, I'm gonna have Hearts Like Ours done by the end of October, and then Nano, I'm gonna use it to plan out the entire rest of the series, but it just didn't happen. I think that I'm going to have a fun time finishing Hearts Like Ours for Nano anyways, so I'm trying to not be disappointed about it, and I'm just looking at it as a fun chance to make a goal for Nano this year. So now my goal is to finish Hearts Like Ours for National Novel Writing Month. And I'm very excited about finishing it, especially because finishing it means that the next thing I get to do is plan the rest of the series, and then once I plan the rest of the series, I get to write book 2, which I like. Not to say that I have favorites, but the couple in book 2, they are my favorites. But yeah, that's my plan for Nano. So like I said, let me know what you guys are planning to do in the comments. Sorry again for missing last week. I'm gonna try to not miss any weeks in November for Wattpad Wednesday, but it is Nano, so no promises, but I am gonna try because I have an exciting little series planned for you guys about my entire process for planning and writing a book for Wattpad. So I'm looking forward to filming that and letting you guys into my brain. Also, I want to try to do some like write with me style videos in November, like kind of like those study with me videos or work with me videos that some people do on YouTube. So hopefully I can get one of those out in November. If not, definitely want to try it in December at least, because I think that that could be just nice to have in the background, like while you guys are writing and stuff. I like to use them. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope I'll see you in the next one, and goodbye. I never know how to end these. I need to get him like his own freaking chair.
Please do.
He is a staple.
Thanks.
He's staying.
I don't have a choice.
He needs somewhere. Sorry, I don't mean to wave you around like that. He needs somewhere that is like a permanent home for him in these videos. But for now, he's just gonna be on the pillow again.